Deeply rooted in music, distinctive cuisine, and natural beauty, Mississippi has so much history. But in 1986, Forest, Mississippi became known for a brutal kidnapping and murder of a 17-year-old. Hello, and welcome to Coffee and Crime. So grab some coffee and let's talk some crime. There's a small sign on Highway 35 North in Harperville, Scott County, Mississippi, that simply reads Clark Cemetery. When you see that sign, turn left off of Highway 35 onto an unpaved road. Follow the chain link fence until you reach the cemetery. When you get out of your vehicle, remember this memorial ID 212 937 611. Where that ID is found is the grave of 17-year-old Shondra Denise May. Her headstone isn't hard to miss. It's a heart-shaped headstone, and it's inscribed with her name, her date of birth, February 26, 1968, and just the month and year, February 1986. Under that, it simply says, "In loving memory." Praying hands are carved beside the inscriptions with roses. The day of her death was left blank, on purpose. Shondra May was a typical 17-year-old. She attended Leeks Academy, a tiny school with only 36 students in its senior class. She was a member of the National Honor Society and was involved with her school newspaper and the Student Christian Organization. She was well liked by her fellow students, teachers, and her coworkers, where she worked part-time at a McDonald's in the nearby town of Forest, Mississippi, and her relationship with her parents was very close. So on the night of February 4th, 1986, Shondra went about her typical routine. She sat down to have dinner with her mother, Janelle May. Then, at around 5:30 p.m., she climbed into her car and made the 12-mile drive to McDonald's to work her 6 p.m. shift. It was a slow night, and her manager allowed her to leave early. But before she left, Shondra called her mother at around 7:40 to let her know she would be coming home early. So once again, Shondra climbed into her car to head home. But she had to make one stop along the way to TG&Y, a popular five and dime store, to buy a Valentine's Day card for her boyfriend. Witnesses afterwards stated that they had seen Shondra in the parking lot of the store at around 7:45, and the cashier at TG&Y remembered Shondra had been alone in the store. Shondra's father, Richard, was working out of state and called home to check on his family. When he reached his wife on the phone around 8:20, she was frantic that Shondra wasn't home yet. Richard suggested that she call his brother and neighbor, Alton Spivey, to see if Shondra had stopped by his place on her way back home. If she was not there, maybe Alton could drive Shondra's normal route to see if she had run into any car trouble. Alton confirmed he had not seen Shondra, and he prepared to retrace her route. Meanwhile, Shondra's mother opened her front door and was startled by what she saw. Shondra's car was parked on a small gravel road, only about 80 yards from the home she shared with her parents. Her front door was ajar, with the window rolled down slightly. The interior light was on, the radio was on, but the engine was off. All of Shondra's belongings, her purse, her keys, everything except her driver's license, was left behind. As the saying goes, it was like she just vanished into thin air. There seemed to be no obvious signs of struggle. Her mother was at a loss. Where was her daughter? Janelle May would go back into the house and begin calling Shondra's friends and boyfriend. Maybe Shondra was with them, but none of them had seen her. Janelle called the police and reported her daughter missing. The scene was baffling to the police. They immediately issued a missing person bulletin to all neighboring counties and began searching for Shondra. Talking to one of Shondra's cousins, David Spivey, he thought he had seen her headlights approaching the homes that night, and he said there were no other vehicles that seemed to be following her as she drove up. The next few weeks were a whirlwind, with intensive air and ground searches spanning 3 counties. Assisting in the efforts were Mississippi State Police, the FBI, and the National Guard. All the searches turned up nothing. No clues, no calls, no evidence. Shondra May was in serious danger, but they couldn't find her, making everyone feel helpless. Then on February 26th, Shondra's 18th birthday, an off-duty firefighter found her nude body in a creek near Bolton, Mississippi, more than 80 miles away. Autopsy revealed that Shondra had been assaulted and hit in the head with a heavy object prior to her death. Her ultimate cause of death was ruled strangulation, probably by tape. Remnants of the tape were found still tightly bound around her neck. Her body was gagged and hogtied and wrapped in garbage bags. She had been thrown into Baker's Creek. The medical examiner also determined that Shondra had been deceased 5 to 10 days, meaning that she was kept alive and held captive for 12 to 17 days after she had disappeared. The horrors she must have endured. Everyone in Shondra's life was looked at, but there was no indication any one of them were involved. A theory swirled around that Shondra may have been abducted by a cop since her driver's side window was slightly rolled down and her driver's license was missing. Maybe she had been pulled over by someone impersonating a cop, then was forced out of her car and into their car. But that theory never was proven true. What happened? She was almost home. The task of finding out who murdered Shondra would go on for decades. Due to DNA evidence being slow back then and no new leads, her case turned ice cold, and it left her loved ones yearning for answers. Then just this last year, 63-year-old Reuben Weeks was arrested. He had been living at a Canton RV park and was a familiar name in the investigation for many years. And why had he been on the investigators' radar? Well, in 1991, Reuben Weeks was incarcerated at the Missouri State Prison for the kidnapping and assault of a female clerk who worked at a motel that Reuben and his family were staying at in Millersville, Missouri. The evidence in that case was eerily similar to Shondra's, and with the help of the victim, Reuben was convicted. She stated to the police that he had been stalking her and lying in wait for her. Then one night, he flashed his car lights at her on a rural road. When she pulled over, he pulled a knife on her and forced her into his car. He drove to a neighboring county and assaulted her near a barn, binding her with tape and leaving her after she begged for her life. Police would say that the tape he used was similar to the tape he used on Shondra. When Reuben was arrested for the murder of Shondra May, he was nonchalant about it and denied all the charges. Shondra's brother Tim May, who was only 18 at the time of his sister's disappearance, remains the only witness to the reckoning of her brutal murder. Tim was quoted, "Closure. My mother died not knowing what happened. My father died not knowing what happened. I'm it." But Reuben will never face a judge, a jury, or Shondra's friends and family, because in December of 2025, Reuben Weeks died while in custody, just a few days before he had appeared in court to determine whether he was to be released on bond, which the judge denied. No foul play is suspected, and the cause of death has not been released. Shondra's parents' graves are next to hers. Janelle May died at the age of 50 in 1994. Richard May died in 2023 at the age of 81. Shondra's parents never got to see her killer receive justice, never got to hear what really happened that night in February 1986. But at least they are all together now, resting in peace. They say that when a criminal leaves a victim alive to tell their story, that criminal learns never to do that again. And in this case, Reuben Weeks saw Shondra and wanted her. He may have watched her for days or even weeks. Or he may have just walked into the McDonald's where she worked and decided he wanted her. We don't know. But what we do know is that evil shows up anytime, during the day, and in this case, at night, while Shondra was driving, making her way to her parents' home, her safe place. It took 39 years for Shondra to finally start to receive justice, but Reuben Weeks died before any of that could happen. But if you are a believer like I am, Reuben Weeks has received the ultimate justice, the justice that God gives out. Thank you for watching Coffee and Crime. Join me every Tuesday as I delve into the darker part of our society with another episode of Coffee and Crime. I'll see you next time.